So since MedSpaTrends.tv is all about tracking down the best people and products and software and services and ideas that make the biggest impact on med spas and the lives of the med spas that they're serving, I have John Bergano here, founder and CEO of Aesthetics Card. I brought him on because I know this is filling a huge need that I've seen with our med spa founders, and I can't wait to dig in with you. Are you ready, John?
I'm ready. Thanks so much, Erica, for having me.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. I love it. Please start by just letting everyone know what is Aesthetics Card.
Our chief product here is a MasterCard business rewards credit card for medical aesthetics practices and providers. I've repositioned Aesthetics Card as more of a business services platform. So, in
Mhm.
addition to offering the credit card for medical aesthetics practices and providers, we also do offer through third-party lenders working capital and equipment loans, and then I also work as an M&A advisor, merger and acquisition advisor. So actually, after my wife and I, we sold the medical aesthetics practice, Contempo Aesthetics, that we co-founded. The firm that had actually brokered our transaction, they hired me to fill this niche for medical aesthetics practices, and owners in the space. And so I've been working with not only just medical aesthetics, but different healthcare providers, to help them get ready to enter the market, to sell their practice, to expand, to seek out private equity. So to do it from a very nuanced, very hands-on approach. There's certainly a lot of players in the market when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, but we try to take a very hands-on approach to, coaching and counseling business owners before we take their practice to market.
That's great. It's so funny in this episode, it's really striking me. I want to cover this connection between everything from what you learned
Mhm.
as a service provider and a leader. You had mentioned, Ritz-Carlton is really well known for their leadership university, and you had mentioned leadership in there too, but your background with Ritz-Carlton early on in your career, you're founding and running this medical spa, Contempo. It looks like it was about 8 years, a little more than 8 years with your wife, and talking about that a little bit. All of the things that you learned, and you said something before we started recording
Mhm.
about getting your branding right, getting your communications right, getting your SOPs, your standard operating procedures in place before you open your doors is like vitally important. And even, I'm assuming you agree with this too, I'll let you go into this, but keeping the end in mind at the very beginning. What's going to be your unique value? How are
Mhm.
you going to look? What are you going to do to communicate that? How are you going to run your operation? So I can tell you again and again and again, a very large majority of the med spa founders that I work with, they want a treat. They don't have a background in business.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I definitely want to cover that in this episode, like all of the pieces, everything you learned through your journey, that's vitally important for them to either do at the very beginning, or if they're an existing spa, like what to consider breaking down and restarting for that ultimate success in operation, success in relationships, if they're going into business with, if they're in business with someone, especially a spouse. But and then also, like, how do you measure that value at the end, when you're selling, or if there's some sort of succession plan? So
Mhm.
can you start a little bit about just the pieces that you think are most vitally important and how it ties into your journey, your professional journey from Ritz-Carlton on?
Sure. So I think, starting off my professional career in luxury hospitality, it's understanding not only the standard operating procedures, but striving for excellence, having a gold standard. And so I think that when you're starting any business, but particularly medical aesthetics, where patients are spending discretionary income with you, this is all elective. Insurance doesn't cover it. Your HSA might, but you need to strive for excellence. You need to have a gold standard. So, what is the gold standard for your practice? And that could be a practice of any size. So, I think first understanding what's that gold standard, and then how do you achieve it? And how you achieve it is your standard operating procedures. It's giving the tools to the staff that you hire, front office, back office, providers, to be able to execute on your vision. That's why in the training manuals that I would develop for our team, there was verbiage. There was verbatim, this is how you need to answer the phone. This
Hmm.
is how you need to respond in an email. These are email templates to respond to patients about pricing, about, concerns post treatment, about questions about services that we currently don't offer, about taking a deposit for consultations. So, setting up the team and providing them all of that information, it's always a work in progress in SOP. I always had the tab open on my screen because you never knew, like, especially this time of year, around the holidays, it throws you for loops. You're getting calls from patients you haven't seen in years thinking their filler migrated. You need to tackle that, and you need to prepare your staff for it, and you need to discuss it as a team as well.
Yeah, that's great. So, we can go into many, many topics in service and SOPs. I would love to, especially considering you're the founder and CEO of Aesthetic Card, I would like to go into the financials. I'd like to go into just the workflow of what are your recommendations of the systems that someone might want to put in place, and even figuring out what to offer, where to get it. First things first. Where do you even start from the financial part of it?
Because Aesthetics Card is partnered with Portrait. Portrait Providers helps get the careers launched for a lot of providers in this space. And as a partner of Aesthetics Card, I recently did a webinar, and one of the things that I spoke about was 5 financial pitfalls that you deal with as a practice owner operator. One of the things that I always advocate for is having a professional in place. I knew that when my wife and I started our practice that we need to have a certified public accountant, a CPA, running our books. We needed to understand best tax strategies, how to look over the books, which expenses to account for, how to get set up. And so I think that having professionals in place before you start your business, or if you started and you still don't have a CPA and you're not having one review your taxes before you file them, you've got to start doing that. Got to make sure that your business is in tip top shape. And so I always think that starting with a professional is key first. Two, maximize your savings. So a lot of vendors in this space, they're going to tell you buy a certain amount of product, and you'll get X amount of pricing, right? Hit this tier and you'll get this pricing. With Aesthetics Card, we're bringing savings to you right off the bat. So if you're on reoccurring weekly auto pay, you're getting 2.25% cash back. On your first $5,000 that you spend in medical supplies, you're getting 5% cash back. So, we're putting out favorable terms for practices that may not want to go down the road of getting on terms with one of the larger injectables manufacturers, distributors. We're providing a credit line to practices, without a time of business requirement. So it's helping earlier stage practices to get that credit so they can go out and make the purchases that they need to run their business.
That's great. Hey, John, so those rebates, I know when I was running my medical company, they add up and it's incredible. Those percentages that you can get back can make all the difference to your cash flow. I'm really curious. So let's go back to Contempo, right? That was the name of the practice that you had for a little over 8 years with your wife. So go back to that experience. I'd love to talk about your frustrations. And I'm going to start at the very beginning. Like, first of all, you need a CPA before you even decide whether you need an LLC or a PLLC, whatever it might be, right? Or a corporation. That's one thing. But what I noticed is, for instance, for many years, and I've done very well financially, I had an American Express, a personal American Express card. When I started running this big medical company, we started a new business American Express. Every single time we tried to buy inventory, it would get declined. And it
Mhm.
was like they had this, thing where you have to build the level of risk or whatever it is, right? They didn't even care that for 10, 11 years, I was already a really good, solid client of
Mhm.
American Express, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious if you can go into your experience at Contempo and what you learned, and like what pieces of that motivated you to start Aesthetic Card.
Because Aesthetics Card is the credit card that I wished I had when we were starting our practice. Before my wife and I, right, we got the EIN, we started to get, the corporation, the documents set up, and we needed to open up a bank account. And so we went bank to bank, and with our great credit scores, we were trying to get either a credit card or a credit line in addition to opening up a business bank account. And it didn't matter. We went to all the big banks, we tried a fewer smaller banks. and we were still not getting the financial tools that we needed in order to get our practice off the ground. And that was extremely frustrating. 6 months in, we end up getting a business credit card, but that credit limit, it remained that same exact credit limit all 8 years through. We couldn't just rely on one credit card, to continue to run our business. And this is a pain point for a lot of practice owners. Right now, while we're surveying and we're getting feedback on what matters most to providers and practices in terms of their credit cards, a lot of them are using multiple credit cards. I cannot tell you how many I'm seeing, 2, 3, 4 cards, that are being used, sometimes personal credit cards as well. From a risk standpoint, don't use your personal credit card. Also, don't use a debit card. Debit card's linked directly to your bank account. The credit card is going to cover you in instances of fraud or mishap. You're going to have 30 days. You're going to be able to see a statement. If there's a fraudulent or wrong charge, you have time to take that up. Whereas a debit card is going to link to your bank account and it's going to take those funds right out. And as a business owner, you already have so many expenses that come directly out of your bank account. Your day-to-day expenses, your injectables purchases, your smaller devices, those do not need to be coming directly out of your bank account. Plus, you're not getting any savings there. If you spend $100,000 a month on supplies and you're using aesthetics card and you're maxing out your cash back and you're taking advantage of, you're going to be netting out at a cash back over, 2.5%. That's over $2,500 back in your pocket, right? That becomes your marketing, part of your marketing budget. That becomes part of your staff expenses right there. I designed a card that I would have loved to have 8 years ago when we were getting off the ground. No time and business requirement, no hard inquiry, no annual fee. You're talking about American Express, Erica, but you're looking at a high annual fee that seemingly goes up every year.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right too. Sometimes American Express, even though there's no credit limit because it's a charge card, sometimes you're getting declined because a vendor that you purchase from doesn't accept American Express. And there's a reason for that because there's a very high merchant service charge, a very high interchange, on American Express cards. So that's why some vendors, they don't accept them at all. Also, too, those points, when you boil those points back down, they usually net out at less than 2%. So if you have a cashback credit card that's getting you over 2%, that in and of itself becomes more valuable than an American Express card.
Yeah. And does your card have an annual fee?
No annual fee, no
Oh,
annual
that's
fee,
great.
no hard inquiry for aesthetics card. And it's
Yeah.
a business MasterCard, so it's linked to your business.
This is what I've noticed. See, we do branding for med spas where we even help them determine what the name is, and a lot of legal things come into play. A lot of legal factors come into play, even determining the name and all that stuff. And then we're working on a lot of domain things, and then we're working on setting up their systems. And those systems, everything we're doing along the way requires a credit card,
Yeah,
including setting up their Google Workspace so they have a professional email and all that.
yeah.
So, one of the things that I encourage people to do immediately is to get one really great card. And I never, until I met you, I never had a great one answer for them. Does it categorize expenses and make it easier on them in some proactive way?
So yes, you can categorize your expenses. And again, because we're a very niche program and a very niche credit card, our
Mhm.
team is taking a look at those expenses, at those categories, seeing where you're spending, who you're spending with. And then what we do is we go out and we're talking to those vendors and we're trying to negotiate to say, our cardholders are spending, $2 million a month with you. We would love to work out some kind of partnership here. Maybe that's 5% cash back. Maybe that's a statement credit. So we're going out and we're doing that work on behalf of our cardholders because again, we are practice advocates. We are provider advocates. Your expenses can be downloaded. Looking ahead to the product roadmap, we're looking at a QuickBooks integration, which will also make it more seamless, for business owners, operators. I've used QuickBooks for the last 10 years, and it's really just top-notch software that can help you get to where you need to be. And again, when you get to taxes and running payroll and everything, there's a lot that you can do already in QuickBooks.
It's incredible that you are negotiating like aggregate pricing with all the card holders.
Mhm.
So everyone is getting better pricing
Better
because they're a
price.
card holder.
Is
That's
there
insane. Banks don't do that.
Capital One, American Express, they're not going to build a team, to go in and negotiate these types of deals. And again, you need to have an industry insider. You need to have an expert who's leading that charge, to pick up the phone, who has the relationships with these vendors, these distributors, these manufacturers to say, look, I know your products. In many cases, I've used your products. I know how to market your products to our cardholder base. This is why it's worthwhile to get together and develop a partnership. That's really why we're doing what we're doing. 10 years ago, you would have looked at a GPO, a group purchasing organization, to do this kind of work for you. But right now, we're doing that work plus providing you a credit line to actually go out and make those purchases. So that's why we're ahead of the pack when it comes to not only bringing these negotiated rates, but we're also bringing in a credit line that you can grow with, as your business grows.
That's incredible. I just love that and appreciate that for so many reasons. It's very real. It's a very real intermediary that is bringing extraordinary value between the spender and the provider. I can see the value too in helping them. We're called Medspa Trends. The card will absolutely help keep the card holder up on trends too, and the underdogs, right? I'm assuming you'll be keeping your eye on maybe better suppliers or
Yeah, and
new things coming.
through my work in mergers and acquisitions as well, I'm privy to a lot of devices and manufacturers and companies that are in stealth mode, that are working behind the scenes to bring new technologies to the market. So I'm in a fascinating position right now where I have a product that's ahead of the market, and then I'm also working with companies that are ahead of the market. This is the goal, is to start to put these together so we could also be the go-to credit lines for some of these companies as well. We could feature their products, we could market together, and to create a very streamlined system. I did want to go back to touch on part of your question before, which was about credit. And so something that I always advocate for is that make sure before you start a business to get your credit in the best possible position that it can be. Hire someone to help you fix things on your credit, pay down your debts, get your debt to income ratio as strong as it could be before you try to start a business. Because if you don't have great credit and you're trying to start a business, you can get things at 640, 680 is much better. If you have a credit score of 720 to 740, fantastic. If you're over 740, you're golden. But those who have credit scores in the high fives, low sixes, it's going to be a struggle, and that's something that I want to prepare, business owners for, because I've spoken to a number of business owners whose credit scores have been subprime, and there's unfortunately there's not a lot that you can do for them. It's risky to extend credit. If they do attain credit, it's usually alternative financing that comes with a very high interest rate, and so you're really putting yourself in a hole before you even get started. And so that's why, I just always advocate, make sure your credit's as strong as it could be. And that's the other thing too. Cardholders don't incur a hard inquiry with aesthetics card. But again, as a business owner, you're going to get your credit run for a number of things. Could be with your lease, your utility company. If you open a credit line with one of the device or injectables distributors, they're going to run your credit. They're going to do a UCC lien, and we don't want to contribute to those hard inquiries that's going to bring down your credit. That's why I designed aesthetics card, because I knew, we dealt with so many hard inquiries in the early years as a result of trying to climb this ladder of getting more financial tools to help us grow and scale. And so part of designing aesthetics card was to help alleviate just one small burden for business owners.
That's great. So the big question is, if someone applies for your card and they get rejected, what does that look like? Do you help them in any way?
There's a proprietary underwriting process, but we do one-on-one onboarding. We also have a manual underwriting team. So what we'll do is when someone's interested in applying, they could submit their application online. They could also email me, and I'll set them up with the team, and we'll get them one-on-one onboarding so we could take a look, because there are unique situations here. There's unique situations when it comes to ownership structure. There's unique situations when it comes to cash flow of a business, or in the instance of newer providers who might have a base and an existing clientele but they've incorporated a new LLC or a new corporation specifically for non-surgical cosmetic procedures. So there's different situations that we need to look at when it comes to underwriting, and we understand that. This is a very intricate, specialty here. So, and it touches on a lot of different, medical doctors and nurse providers as well. Again, if someone's interested to apply for aesthetics card, you could fill out the application on our website, aestheticscard.com, or email me, John, which is JOHN at aestheticscard.com. And I'm happy to get you set up with the team for a one-on-one onboarding.
That's amazing that you're so high touch in the onboarding process, and that you stay high touch through the entire experience of being a card holder. I mean, that's just insane. I'm so happy to hear that you exist. It's incredible.
Thank you, Erica.
And are you helping at all with inventory management, or, is that just going too far? Or where do you draw the line?
Through online education. So right now I'm looking at teaming up with a group that's going to be introducing online tutorials and online training, because I do feel like inventory management, PARs, this is something that I've spoken to on previous webinars as well. It's so important to keep things as tight as possible. And this is what I advocate for when I'm working with a client, on the mergers and acquisition side as well. When you want to prepare to go to market, it's a process that starts at least a year in advance, ideally, where you want to keep your costs down. You don't want to invest in anything, whether that's a device or bulk of injectables that's going to bring down your cash flow and your profit margins. It does become a fine balance, right? You don't want to have to pay as much in taxes, so you want to bulk up those expenses by the end of the year. But at the same time, if you are preparing to go to market, or to navigate an unexpected economic turn, you don't want to be sitting on thousands of dollars, worth of product and devices that you're not going to be using if you don't have to. Like I remember right before COVID, I think Q4 2019, we had bulked up a little bit in injectables, and products, skincare products. Thankfully for the skincare products, I was able to take that home and ship that out during 10 weeks of quarantine. But for the injectables that sat on our shelves, there was nothing I could do about that. Our products sat on the shelf for 12 weeks, and we had to try to keep up with practice expenses during that time through online orders. So it is a fine line. But again, I think most businesses would rather have that cash in the bank as an emergency fund, rather than spent on goods that aren't producing for them here and now.
Yeah, that's very, very good. That's going to be an entire episode, as well as how to manage that, managing cash flow. And it has to do with logistics too, of how you're ordering and, when it comes in, and how you're promoting, how much money are you putting into marketing, those kinds of things. Just real quick, before we wrap up, I definitely want to talk about mergers and acquisitions and your background in running Contempo. You were the operator of Contempo. Your wife is the medical director. You're running this Medspa for 8 years. You mentioned, preparing for M&A can take up to a year. I would argue too, and I totally get what you're saying, to like poise it. But I think it should start at the very beginning of how are you defining your value to the market, right? So if you were to explain just the key points as a mergers and acquisitions professional yourself, John, what are the top criteria that you look at in optimizing the value of a med spa?
Your transaction value is going to be judged on your EBITDA. So that's your earnings before interest, tax, and amortization. What does that mean? It means stay as profitable as you can. Price your goods and services at the most that you can get in the market. Don't discount more than you have to. Don't run a higher payroll than you have to. Keep those, costs as low as possible. Don't spend superfluously on things you don't need. Negotiate every detail of your business. Negotiate as much as you can with your lease. Negotiate on your devices. Negotiate, on your cost of goods. Use Aesthetics Card to maximize your cash back. Don't spend an annual fee for your credit card. Cut those fees out. So you've got to do all of those little things. And it does seem like a very long process and a tough process, but it's the necessary process if you're going to get into business. And so, yes, to your point, Erica, your exit strategy almost begins day one when you open your doors. You've got to constantly be looking at how can I make the best possible business run from the get-go? How do I make myself as attractive to a potential exit as I can starting with day one? And I think a lot of that is scaling as you go. It's not taking on more debt than you have to as well. And it's just setting yourself up in your business.
Yeah, and you make a really strong point in the fact that profit is at the top. Profit is at the top of the criteria list is how healthy is your business, right? There's certain acquirers that are looking for a mess and they can clean it up easily. In the med spa business, it's different because I think you pegged it that in every market, there's the individuals who will spend top dollar and won't go to the lowest price because it's associated with low quality or high risk. I think it's important for a med spa to decide at the very beginning, what are we
Yeah.
going to look like? How much are we going to put into this? What kind of client do we want? And that client database is part of a big part of your value and loyalty, all of those key performance indicators or profit, loyalty, referrals, I would guess, right, John, is another, if you see a high referral rate as well, those kind of programs and reputation.
High referral rate. My wife, Dr. Rachel, she has invested so much in herself. And the patients have always been attracted to that. They know that she's gone to train with top docs in the UK and Paris, and that she's traveled the country and she's shadowed top injectors who've been doing this for 15, 20 years before her as a way to grow her craft. And so that's the other thing too. You cannot charge top dollar unless you have the education, the training, the credentials to back that up. It's hard to compete in this market as well. And we've seen it time and time again with hiring mid-level providers. They come in, they're being told you're going to be on devices for 6 months before you even pick up a Botox syringe. But what are they doing? They're biting at the bit. They want to start injecting Botox the day they get there. They think that they watch YouTube trainings and that gives them all the experience that they need, all the training that they need. Everyone wants to be like a social media star as well, right? And so that's what I also just, before we wrap up here, just want to get to the point is that medical aesthetics is a medical specialty. It might not be, recognized by any specific board or oversight, but at the same time, it is still medicine. And so, I still think that providers, practice owners, they still need to treat that with the utmost amount of respect and reverence that medicine should be treated with. Because again, like business fundamentals are one thing, but knowing that you're running a medical practice first and foremost, that needs to go into everyone's game plan.
Are you working equally with the device, the technology, aesthetics technology, lasers and other devices as much as you are the injections?
As far as like companies that I'm working with,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
providers.
I have a lot of different companies in the pipeline right now, and it's interesting. It's an equal mix of practices, healthcare providers, as well as device and
Software
software.
systems.
There's just a number. On the aesthetics card side, we have a couple of strong partners right now on medical device and injectables distribution as well. We have more in the pipeline. We have skincare as well, marketing. So we're trying to touch on really the top vendors that a practice needs to rely on to get their practice up and running and growing and scaling as well.
Anyone who's interested in this card, and if you're founding a med spa or you own a med spa, I wouldn't even hesitate to just consolidate something, and you're getting John and his team's expertise for free, which is insane. I didn't even know that before we got on this call. So please let them know how they get in touch with you. I'd really appreciate that.
So our website is aestheticscard.com. And then I could be reached either on LinkedIn or my email is John, JOHN, at aestheticscard.com.
Okay. Aesthetics card. All right. Beautiful. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time today, John. I know how busy you are, and I am looking forward to just following your journey and supporting your efforts in any way we can. So thanks again for being here. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Talk soon. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.